Late in the evening, Captain Semyon Bondarenko, an officer with the Drug Enforcement Administration, was sitting at his desk, going through the latest files. His eyes were watering from cigarette smoke. On the table, an ashtray was piled high with cigarette butts, and a plastic cup held the remains of some ramen broth. This was his entire meal for the day. For 3 months, they had been embedding officers into a gang of traffickers operating in a large American city, and suddenly something had gone wrong. Last night, they were supposed to meet, and the police would have busted the entire group. But at the last moment, Senior Lieutenant Georgy Stepanov reported that the meeting was being postponed. Since then, for 2 full days, he had not been in contact. The entire police force was on high alert, but he still hadn't been found, nor had those they were planning to catch red-handed. Most of all, Bondarenko feared that Gosha had been exposed. That would mean certain death. His phone rang. It was Captain Sergei Znev, a detective from another department with whom he had been friends for 20 years. They had served in the army together, and after returning to their hometown, they both enrolled in law school. "Hey, I think this will be interesting for you," he said in a tired, hoarse voice. "What is it?" Semyon put out his last cigarette and blew out the smoke. "Remember you recently asked me to check out a certain guy?" "I remember. That's Zadarin." Zadarin was the informant through whom Stepanov had connected with the drug dealers. "Yes, him. An hour ago, he died at the intersection of Moscow, Volga, and Rakitovskoy highways. He crashed into that stupid banner on the roundabout. Can I come over? Why else would I be calling you? We're working. Everything is cordoned off. I'll be waiting. Look, there's something strange going on here. Come and see for yourself. He's already been taken to the morgue. But you should see the car. It's interesting." Semyon arrived quickly. The Opel was almost new and fast. The captain had paid off the loan in the last year, and rush hour was long over. If Zneed had called at 5 p.m., he would never have made it so quickly. He would have been stuck in traffic. That was the problem with all cities that stretched out like a sausage along a river. And this city, in addition, was squeezed between 2 rivers. The evening traffic jams could be insane. His old friend was already waiting for him at the scene. "Did you see? The car is a complete wreck," Sergei said instead of a greeting. "That's an understatement. The engine went right into the passenger compartment." Semyon walked around the car, which was smashed into the concrete base of the banner with the inscription, "Kirovsky District, founded in 1942. A billboard stood nearby, on which a beautiful red-haired girl smiled, advertising an unforgettable vacation. Now, the only vacation Zadarin was getting was in the fields of heaven. Semyon looked inside. He was met with the smell of engine oil and, for some reason, a faint scent of swamp. He took out a cigarette and lit it. "What about the driver?" he asked, puffing out a stream of grayish smoke. "He's a goner. He flew through the windshield, but that didn't make him any more alive. I suppose he died instantly. That's the thing. I think he died a little earlier. A murder. Who the hell knows? Take a closer look," Sneeve said, walking around the car and stopping at the driver's door. "Did you see this? It looks like seaweed, doesn't it?" Semyon squatted down, took the greenish fibers hanging from the crumpled metal with 2 fingers, and brought them to his nose. It was definitely seaweed, and it smelled like mud. It was the same smell he had noticed immediately. "Where did this come from?" he asked, standing up and brushing off his hand. "If I only knew." Sergei took 2 cigarettes from Semyon. He lit one and carefully put the other, so as not to break it, into his pocket. The body is also covered in this stuff, like noodles. I don't understand. Me neither. I think he was drowned. I think he was already dead when he crashed into the banner. The autopsy results will be ready in the morning, but I think they'll find water in his lungs. Simeon returned to the wrecked car and looked into the cabin again. It was a mess, a pile of scrap metal, and again he felt that barely perceptible swampy smell. So, Zadarin was murdered, and he was the last link to Gosha Stepanov. And it was unknown if Stepanov himself was even alive. Semyon had to admit it. Everyone knew Gosha could be dead, but no one wanted to think about it. The disappearance of an operative in such a case means only one thing. His cell phone was turned off. He hadn't been in touch. They had lost Gosha. Zadarin was a courier for the gang. It was through him that they got to everyone else. And last night, they were going to bust a group of about 7 people, but they didn't. The gang must have found out that he was an informant. Zadarin's death was strange. Where did that damn seaweed come from? He didn't climb out of a swamp. Semyon didn't believe in mysticism, understanding that any event, even the most incredible one, has a perfectly plausible explanation. However, to drown a person and then put him in a car to fake an accident is too complicated. They wouldn't do that. They would just kill him and dump him. That night, Semyon dreamed of Gosha. He stood there, covered in seaweed, saying something unintelligible. Semyon woke up, drenched in a cold sweat. His heart was pounding like a rabbit in a field. He thought he saw a dead Gosha standing in the darkness. He pulled his cell phone from under his pillow and shined it around. A lamp! I'm going crazy! Semyon checked the time, 4 a.m. He didn't feel like sleeping anymore, so he went to the kitchen to drink tea. He had breakfast, listened to the radio for about 3 hours, then began to dress leisurely. Just as he was about to leave the apartment, Sergei Znev called. Listen, Senya, I'm losing my mind here. What's going on? Semyon tensed up, knowing he wouldn't hear anything pleasant. It's awful. If you have time, come over. I was right. A drowned man was driving the car. Can you believe it? How? Semyon was standing in the stairwell with a phone in one hand and his key in the other. Just like that, his lungs are full of water. He drowned. They say it's water from the river. Semyon finally managed the lock. That's crazy, he said. How did he drive the car? Maybe they put him behind the wheel and got the car going? Why all the complications? Who the hell knows? Come on over. I asked the state police for the security camera footage. They promised to have it ready soon. After all, he's your guy. You'll be interested too. An hour later, Semyon was in the yard of the investigative department. Let's go. Let's watch the recording. They just sent it to me, Sergei said instead of a greeting. He led his friend to his office, poured him strong coffee, and sat him at the table. On the computer screen was the intersection of Moscow Highway and Dimitrova Street. Watch, he's about to drive through. Znev poked his finger at the corner of the screen where the car appeared. So what? Semyon asked. He's driving normally, not breaking any rules. He's driving very well for a drowned man. Znev chuckled. The screen changed, now showing the intersection with Tashkent Street. The car went through the intersection without incident and even stopped at a red light. Beyond the street, the park began, and the next camera was at the site of the accident. The new shot showed the car suddenly swerving on the road for no reason. Did you see that? Znev asked. Semyon had seen it. The car clipped the side of a Renault, then nearly went into the shoulder, but somehow managed to stay in the middle of the lane and continued to race towards the roundabout. Sneeb moved the player's cursor, rewinding the video. "Right at this spot, your Zattern went out," he said. "And it would be one thing. You can always expect that from a drug addict. But he drowned. Do you understand? They found water in his lungs and stomach. And judging by how he was driving the car up to this intersection, there was no damn water in him then. It's as if he was filled with it in just a few seconds." At that moment, the car crashed at full speed into the sign. Kirovsky District, founded in 1942, in the middle of the roundabout. After that, Sergei Sneeb put his hand on the mouse and clicked pause. Time for the car and its driver seemed to stand still, postponing their demise. "Or as if he was drowned and then put inside the car?" Semyon asked. Sneeb nodded. "Yes, but there was no one with him. He was driving alone, handling the car just fine. And then suddenly he drowned in water. And not just drowned, he looks like a drowned man, you know?" Semyon couldn't tear his eyes away from the car, frozen in its final lunge. "Mysticism? Yeah," he replied. "I don't believe in mysticism." "Me neither. What are we going to do?" Semyon shrugged. "I don't know about you, but I'm going to look for the others. You help me find one." Sergei turned off the video. Semyon reached for his now-cold coffee. His pocket buzzed. He had a text message. He pulled out his phone and opened the message. It was from Gosha. "He's alive, the devil." A thought flashed through his mind. "Look for me in Podstepki." It was written exactly like that, in all caps. "Gosha's been found," Semyon said with relief and began to dial the operative's number. But the smartphone said that the subscriber was turned off or outside the network service area. Then he quickly typed a message. "Are you okay?" The reply came almost instantly. "No." There were no more messages from Gosha. That was it. The village of Podstepki was way out past Tolyatti, on the shore of the Ziguliovsky Reservoir. What the hell Gosha was doing there, he had yet to figure out. If he was texting, he was alive. But judging by the last message, he was in trouble. They probably busted him and Zattern was already dead. Semyon downed his coffee in one gulp, quickly got ready, and raced back to his office. On the way, he spoke with his boss. Major Silvestrov was an understanding man. By the time Semyon arrived, the operations group was ready to deploy. They reached Podstepki quickly, at least faster than Semyon expected. The road was monotonous, fields, and trees along the roadside blocking the view. The GPS led the van to a turn where a dirt road went left and started to beep. The driver Ivanovich, an old man who had worked in the force for decades, swore habitually, turned it off, and made the turn. The wheels bounced on the potholes. They entered the village, walked through the streets, and stopped not far from the shore. The operatives split up. Sonia, with whom Semyon had eaten a lot of salt, went in one direction, and the others went in another, and they began to question the locals, even roping in the local precinct officer. Ivanovich stayed at the wheel and took an unfinished detective novel from the glove compartment. Semyon went to the shore. Here it was more or less gentle and rocky, and further upstream there was a steep cliff on the very edge of which trees grew. Thanks to them, the bank didn't continue to crumble. There, among the trees in the dense forest, a health resort called Scarlet Sails was hidden. It was quite possible that Gosha was there, and not in Podstepki. What would these criminals be doing in the village? They should be looked for at the health resort. And the Yagodinsky forest was thick, so they could do their dark deeds there. Now Semyon was almost certain that they needed the health resort, not the village. While the operatives were questioning the locals, he called his boss, spoke with Silvestrov, and asked him to find out who had been at Scarlet Sales yesterday and the day before. The major promised to find out as soon as possible, and also told him that the provider had responded to the request. According to the provider, Gosha's phone had been turned off for 3 days, and no calls or messages had been registered from it. Semyon checked his phone to look at the messages. The last 2 morning texts had been from Gosha's number. Or maybe the criminals killed him and were texting from a fake number? But why would they do that? To lure Semyon Bondarenko to Podstepki. That was a stupid idea. After walking along the shore, he returned to the van, where several elderly women, all in worn-out sweaters with stretched-out sleeves, had gathered, as if picked for the part. They were trying to get Ivanovich to talk, but he, buried in his book, acted as if he didn't notice them. "What's up, grandmas?" Semyon asked. "What are you looking for?" the most talkative one asked. "What are we looking for? Why else would we come here? For a suntan? What are you looking for?" Semyon took a picture of Gosha and Zadarin out of his pocket. He looked around, saw a bench not far away next to a water pump with 2 buckets, and invited the grandmothers to sit down. Another old woman was sitting there, looking at Semyon with dissatisfaction. She was probably the oldest of them all. Her face was not a face, but a mass of scars and wrinkles. But her sharp, watchful eyes gleamed from beneath her colorful headscarf. Semyon was used to such looks. People either just don't like cops or are afraid of them. But when they need to file a complaint against their neighbors, they run there headlong, regardless of their dislike. The grandmothers sat in a row, and Semyon gave them the photo. They looked at the cards, passed them to each other, clicked their tongues, and shook their heads. "No, we haven't seen them." But the talkative grandmother suddenly perked up and pointed a finger at Gosha and Zadarin. "I saw those too." At these words, the watchful grandmother got up, straightened her long skirt, walked to the pump, and started rattling her buckets. "Where?" Semyon almost jumped. "There at the health resort, both yesterday and today. Early this morning, my daughter works there as a cook, and I went to get groceries. Well, I went to visit my daughter." "Grandma, this is very valuable information. The police will be grateful." "Wait, today? Not yesterday?" "Don't get confused. Yes, today, just as I came to visit my daughter in the morning. Even their guard, Stepan Ilyich, saw them there together. They went down the path towards the cliff. It's a steep cliff there, by the shore. Can you please give me your name for the record?" "What record? I didn't see anything. I must have imagined it." The grandmother quickly slipped away. Her friends and neighbors followed her. Only their watchful companion continued to rattle her buckets, pouring water. "No," Semyon thought. "She must have mixed something up. She couldn't have seen Zadarin in the morning. In the morning, he was on the medical examiner's table." The watchful grandmother put the 2 half-filled buckets on the ground, sat on the bench, and said quietly, "You should leave here, son." "And why is that, Grandma?" Semyon asked. "There's a cemetery a little further up the stream. When they made the reservoir, they flooded it, and it would be nothing, but sometimes bad things happen because of it. You can't disturb them. But grandmas, those are just fairy tales, and we're not disturbing anyone." The grandmother's eyes flashed. "Someone already disturbed him without you. Fairy tales. I've seen enough of these fairy tales. One person is buried there. He was a driver, and he lived in our collective farm. They called him Misha. I knew him well. In 52, he was a little drunk, drove into the village, and ran over a child. Well, the villagers took the sin upon themselves and buried him there, as it should be. But when the cemetery was flooded, he began to appear on the shore. And if some injustice happens, he can set things right. Well, in his own way. And try to figure out who's right and who's wrong. A lot of drowned people happen sometimes. Okay, Grandma. Semyon waved her off. He didn't know why he was sitting and listening to all this nonsense. If you have nothing more to say about the case, then thank you and goodbye. We need to get to work. Look, son, you'll remember Grandma Alexandra later. But it will be too late. Goodbye, Grandma. Grandma Alexandra took her buckets and slowly and heavily hobbled towards the gate. What a day, Semyon thought. One says she saw Zadarin when he was already dead. The other is spouting complete nonsense. And it's not an asylum nearby, just a regular health resort. 15 minutes later, the guys came out. Nobody had found anything. It seemed Semyon was the only lucky one. Semyon hadn't even had time to talk to his men when Major Silvestrov called and ordered them to go to the health resort. He had managed to talk to the manager of Scarlet Sails. 2 or 3 of those who had arrived 2 days ago were still on the health resort grounds. Semyon gave the command to board, and the van set off. It wasn't far, and in about 10 minutes, the vehicle was rolling among the oaks and birches of the Yagodinsky forest. On the health resort grounds, they stopped by a monument to Lenin in front of a 2-story building with windows that were almost the entire wall. Semyon hadn't even gotten out of the cabin when the building door opened and a short, stout, elderly man with glasses came down the steps. It was immediately clear that they had been expected. The expression on the face of the man who greeted them was as if he were walking to Golgotha. "You got here quickly," he said, extending his hand to Semyon and introducing himself. "Ilya Ivanovich." His hand was narrow, like a child's. "That's our job, to get here quickly," Semyon replied. "Show us where the people who came to the health resort 2 days ago are staying." Ilya Ivanovich nodded. He nodded nervously and fearfully. The lenses of his glasses shone with anxiety. "There are 2 of them?" Semyon asked. "Yes." "And were there others?" "Yes, we've found out everything. 1 left yesterday morning, 2 left today, and 2 stayed here. There was 1 more. He hasn't been seen for 2 days." Semyon took the photos out of his pocket. "Were they here too?" Ilya Ivanovich wiped his glasses with a handkerchief and peered at the faces. "Yes, that's them, this one." He poked a finger at Gosha. "He didn't come back from a walk. They all went for a walk late in the evening, but came back without him. And this one," Ilya Ivanovich pointed to Zadarin, "left yesterday morning." "Okay, lead the way." Semyon nodded to the men, and Sonya with 2 other operatives got out of the car. "They're staying in that building over there." Ilya Ivanovich pointed to a 3-story building with rows of open balconies. "What floor?" Semyon inquired. "The 2nd. "Damn, not high." "They could jump from the balcony," Semyon said, and turned to his operative. "Call 3 more men and have them stay outside. Guard the balconies." Ilya Ivanovich led Semyon to the central entrance, and the 3 men stayed to watch the balconies. They went upstairs, past a double plastic door. Through the lobby, they reached the stairs. It was quiet inside. People were resting in their rooms or swimming at the beach. "This way." Ilya Ivanovich led them down the corridor and pointed to a door. "Knock here and ask them to open," Semyon whispered, unbuckling his holster. The men pressed themselves against the walls on either side of the door, their weapons drawn. Ilya Ivanovich knocked. "Please open. We need to check the room." Silence. Ilya Ivanovich shrugged helplessly. He was about to say something else, but Semyon stopped him. He heard a thud, and then a quiet gurgling, as if someone had left a faucet on and water was overflowing the sink. Water flowed from under the door, and a faint scent of mud, a very familiar smell, was heard. Semyon pushed Ilya Ivanovich aside and, grabbing the handle with both hands, jerked it sharply. The door wasn't locked. Sonya rushed inside, leaving Ilya Ivanovich in the corridor, followed by the others. The floor was wet, a complete flood. The room was for 4 people, with a balcony. If anyone tried to escape, it wasn't far. A man lay on the floor by a bed. His appearance was not good, worse than Ilya Ivanovich's a minute before his supposed heart attack. He was lying on his back, his legs bent at the knees, as if he had tried to crawl but didn't make it. He was dead. Semyon recognized him. This was another gang member, higher in rank than Zadarin, who was found drowned yesterday in the car cabin. Selentiev, or as he was called in his circles, Sila, had also drowned. It was immediately obvious. Water was flowing from his mouth, and water was flowing from his ears. From his eyes, too, and from his nose. Probably from his butt as well. It was as if someone had filled him with water using a pump. You didn't need to wait for the autopsy results to understand that this man had drowned. Semyon put his pistol back in the holster and squatted down next to the corpse. The smell of mud became sharper. Only now did he notice that the entire floor was covered in seaweed, in thin greenish threads. "Damn, just like Zadarin." He touched the dead man's hand. The skin was icy, like a frog's. Semyon got up and went out into the corridor. "Turn off the faucet," he said to Ilya Ivanovich, "or you will flood everyone." "Where's the sink?" "There's no sink there," the man stammered. "This is a cheap room with no amenities." "Oh, and where's the water from?" No, I don't know." Ilya Ivanovich's glasses fogged up from agitation. He began to wipe the lenses with a handkerchief again. Semyon went back into the room, his boots squelching in the water, walked around the room, looked into every nook and cranny, and onto the balcony. Indeed, there were no sinks here. Where did the water come from then? Well, from the same place it came from in Zadarin's car. From nowhere. What did all this mean? He ordered the local police and an ambulance to be called. It was funny in such cases to call an ambulance a hearse. He returned to Ilya Ivanovich. "You said there were 2 of them left." Ilya Ivanovich nodded. He put away his handkerchief and put his glasses back on the bridge of his nose. "Where is the second one?" The man shrugged. The guys went down and scattered in different directions around the health resort. "What happens now?" Ilya Ivanovich asked. "Nothing," Semyon said. "He'll be taken away, and they'll clean up the room. Is there a neighbor here? I need to question people." Ilya Ivanovich looked at him distantly and, as if coming to his senses, replied, "No, the season is just starting, and there's no one else on this floor." Semyon looked into the room. "Can you tell me where the water came from?" Ilya Ivanovich shook his head. "No, there's no water in the room. If they brought it themselves, that's a lot of water, a whole barrel." "Yeah, they brought water to drown themselves." Semyon chuckled, but stopped himself, remembering that he wasn't talking to a colleague, and said, "Okay, you're probably uncomfortable here. Let's move away. Lock the door, and don't let anyone in until the experts arrive." Ilya Ivanovich locked the door and, with visible relief, walked towards the window at the end of the corridor. Simeon's phone buzzed in his pocket. A text message. He took out his phone. It was a message from Gosha. "I'm here." Semyon stopped, letting Ilya Ivanovich go ahead, and dialed Gosha's number. "The subscriber's device is turned off or outside the network service area." What the hell? He tried again and again, but there was no answer. He hadn't had time to put his smartphone back in his pocket when Silvestrov called. "The guys have left," he said. "I don't know what's going on with you, but try to use your brain. At the entrance to the city, they found 2 more drowned men, and they're both our old friends Sitter and Sinai, from the group that Grigoriev was supposed to meet with." "And how are they?" "Stupid question. How else can drowned people be? It's messed up. The car cabin is full of seaweed. The car, of course, is a wreck. It suddenly crashed at full speed into an oncoming truck. But these 2, by the way, didn't die from the crash." "What is going on? Can you explain it to me?" "No, but I'll try to figure it out." "I hope you do." Silvestrov hung up. Semyon caught up with Ilya Ivanovich. He reviewed the statistics in his head. 1 yesterday, 3 today. 4 gang members died the same death. The same, but not quite ordinary. They suffocated, they drowned. And the seaweed? It was clear that they hadn't drowned, that they had been drowned. But damn it, how can you drown a person who is in a room where the only water is in a plastic bottle? And again, that seaweed. For some reason, he remembered that old woman from Podstepki with her story about the murdered driver. Semyon looked at Ilya Ivanovich, and he was very pale. Of course, now the management of the health resort would have to answer a lot of questions. Through the window, Semyon saw Sonya hurrying towards the building. He opened the window and called him. The operative stopped and gestured. "We found him," he said, and drew his finger across his throat. "Gosha?" Semyon shouted. Sonya shook his head. Thank goodness it wasn't Gosha. Semyon picked up his phone again. "Where are you?" he texted. Not even 3 seconds later, the answer came back. "In Podstepki." Semyon reminded Ilya Ivanovich that no one was allowed in the room and rushed down the corridor to the stairs. He tumbled down the steps. He reached the breathless Sonya. "What's up?" "Same thing. He's all wet, seaweed all around, a drowned man." "In short, who is it?" "The raspy one, judging by his face." "That makes 5. "Yes, someone's killing them." Sonya snorted, choking back a laugh. "Yeah, drowning them, literally." "Okay, let's go to Podstepki." "Why?" "Gosha's probably there. I don't know what's going on with him." He sent another text message. Sonya waved his hands, calling Ivanovich. He put down his detective novel and took the wheel. On the way, Sonya asked, "How can he be in Podstepki? You said that grandmother saw Gosha and Zadarin at the health resort." "Yes, at first I couldn't understand how Zadarin could be at the health resort when he was already. And yes, the old woman was wrong. Senility. She didn't see them today, but yesterday or even the day before. And now everything adds up. Gosha wasn't here today." Semyon took his phone again and dialed. "Gosha, are you okay?" "No, can you give me directions where to look for you?" "Water." He tried to call again. "The subscriber's device is turned off." The car drove into the village. Semyon told Ivanovich to stop in the same place they had been before. The old women were sitting in their usual spot, cracking seeds. Sonya and Ivanovich stayed in the cabin. Ivanovich immediately buried himself in his book, and Semyon got out and walked towards the old women. You came back, son? Asked Grandma Alexandra. I came back, Grandma. Tell me what you know. I don't know anything, son. Terrible things are happening. They woke him up. They woke him up again. What's going on? Bad people did bad things on the shore. Someone was looking for someone there. And he, Misha, couldn't stand evil. He was a hothead. He always paid back evil with evil. And the villagers did the same to him when he ran over the boy with his car. So he wanders, restless, angry at everyone and at himself too. And what now? Nothing. Just wait until he calms down. He was rowdy when he was alive, and now even more so. What happened on the shore? Semyon asked. Grandma Alexandra chewed on her lips. I went into the yard. It was late and dark, and I saw a car drive towards the cliff. I didn't see people, but something happened there. Someone was killed. As surely as I'm standing here, someone was killed. I heard a scream. Why would I get involved? So I didn't. And I didn't tell my husband either. What happened next? Next, they left. In the morning, there was no one there, only tire tracks in the grass. They probably threw him from the cliff and dragged him to the water. And that's a sign for him. When evil happens on the shore, he wakes up and begins to take revenge. To avenge his ruined life, to avenge others. First the guilty, then the innocent, and so on until he calms down. And how does he take revenge? He drowns them. It happens that innocent people get caught in the crossfire. Where is this place, Grandma? Where the car was. You see that tree growing next to it? There's a path that goes down. You shouldn't go there. I saw Misha here yesterday morning. His spirit is wandering the shore again. Semyon waved away her gibberish, returned to the van, told Ivanovich to wait, and asked Sonia to come with him. He headed for the cliff. He found the path among the rocks and began to descend. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. Semyon stopped halfway down, took out his smartphone. I'm close. Semyon ran on, and soon found himself on the rocky beach, a narrow strip stretching into the distance. The phone buzzed again. Warm. He got closer to the water. He thought he saw some tracks on the stones, and suddenly realized that they had dragged Gosha to the water here. Perhaps he was still alive then. Semyon no longer doubted that Gosha was dead. He didn't even try to guess who was sending these messages. Gosha's spirit, a devil, his imagination. The important thing was that these text messages had led him to the place where the operative had died. Semyon stopped at the water's edge. The water was dark and murky. A strong wind was blowing, and waves were crashing against the stones. The phone buzzed once more. Hot! Semyon suddenly felt as if Gosha was looking at him from the water. He clearly saw his face. Pale, like a drowned man's. He felt a sharp smell of seaweed hitting his nose, and suddenly he realized that he couldn't breathe. In the next moment, his lungs began to slowly fill with river water. He coughed, tried to spit out the liquid, but there was too much of it. The water was pouring into him, as if someone was pumping it in. His vision darkened. His fingers clawed at his shirt, tearing off the buttons. His legs gave way. Semyon fell to his knees. No, he heard Gosha's voice. No, not him. He's one of us. He's my friend. His consciousness was fading, but at the same time, Semyon felt that it was getting easier. Either he had already died, or he had just passed out. In an instant, a vision flashed before his eyes. Gosha was fighting with someone, with a man or a spirit. Semyon couldn't know. Just as he couldn't know who had won the fight. It was probably that dead man the old woman had talked about. Then, A scene flashed in his head like lightning, in which he saw the last moments of Senior Lieutenant Stepanov's life. They were dragging him, broken after the fall from the cliff, to the water. Semyon saw the face of one of the murderers. Zadarin. So that's what happened. It was Zadarin who had betrayed Gosha. Senya, wake up! Semyon opened his eyes. He was lying on his back, and a lonely cloud was floating high in the blue sky. Sonya was leaning over him, and 2 medics were standing nearby. You scared us, buddy. I thought you were a goner too. You're not drowning. I'm unsinkable. I heard you scream and ran down, almost broke my neck for you, and there you were, lying all covered in seaweed throwing up water. Semyon got up and sat down, leaning his back against a stone. Where are these guys from? You told us to call the ambulance. I made it just in time to call. They took care of those bodies at the health resort. What about them? They can wait. So, I almost became the 7th one, or rather, the 6th. The operative corrected him. Semyon sighed. Gosha was the 6th. Or rather, Gosha was the 1st. They killed him and dumped him in the river. Nonsense. Then how was he sending texts? I don't know. His head ached terribly. Despite the fact that Semyon had gulped down a hell of a lot of water, his throat was dry, and he wanted to drink. We need divers, Semyon rasped. Let them look for Gosha. Sonya helped him up. Semyon turned to the water. For a moment, it seemed to him that Gosha was looking at him from under the water. For some reason, Captain Bondarenko was sure that this damn driver, who was offended by the whole world, had calmed down, and there would be no more traffic accidents involving drowned people on the city streets until something terrifying happened on the shore again.